Hello, I am Reed, and I have autism. I'm going to talk about autism to allow neurotypicals to understand us and clear up some misconceptions. First, many people with autism do not like terms like high functioning and low functioning. It puts us in groups that are not necessarily true. Autism has very wide variation in different areas such as socialization, sensory issues, and communication, and not being able to socialize does not always mean that they're not good at talking, and it definitely doesn't mean that they can't function. For instance, I am horrible at socializing, and can sometimes just go completely mute for multiple hours in public, but I can get very talkative with people I know. I'm not saying that this is always true, just that grouping us like that is not very accurate. Okay. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about autism organizations. The biggest organization focused on autism, the most well-known one, Autism Speaks, is actually absolutely horrible. Please do not support them. They believe things such as ABA would help autistic people. Applied behavior analysis, ABA, does not sound like a bad thing, but it often is. While there are many situations where it can be helpful to people with other types of disorders and stuff, with autism, it pretty much isn't. It's just hurting autistics when they act abnormal to force them into being normal, which we don't know that it's wrong. I've done a lot of things that I didn't know were not correct and still do sometimes. So this needs to be stopped. Nobody should ever be forced to be normal, especially in painful ways like that. If someone is just being themselves, no matter how weird that is, as long as it doesn't affect others in bad ways, it should be accommodated for, or accepted, not just forced to stop. Autism Speaks' logo is the puzzle piece, and autistics who know how bad the company is refuse to associate themselves with the puzzle piece. Companies like this need to be shut down. Any autistic people who have ever worked for Autism Speaks have left very quickly because of what they're like, because of how bad the company is. If you have supported them, I'm not shaming you. You probably didn't know how bad they are, but please stop and get anyone you know who supports them to stop as well. Organizations like that say they are looking for a cure, but autism doesn't need a cure. It needs to be accommodated for, and sometimes the person needs to be helped, but it should never be cured. That makes it sound like a disease, which it isn't. I'm going to talk about some things that you can do to help anyone you know who has autism. First, something about talking. A common thing with autistics is needing some time to process things that were just said. This definitely affects me. Someone will say something to me, I'll ask what they said, and then realize what they said as they're repeating it. Another thing is sensory issues. This one also affects me a lot. We are often not able to block out external things such as lights and sounds. I often have to get people to repeat themselves multiple times because of things like this. Back when I did semi-homeschool, I would often have a hard time focusing on what my mom was saying because of hearing birds chirping through a closed window that she couldn't even hear. A big thing with sensory issues is sensory overload. This affects me a lot. When there's too much light and or sound, we can get overwhelmed. This causes us to just shut down and not be able to do much. I have had times where I was crying because of sensory overload. Yeah, it affected me a lot. Constant tapping and other sounds like that affect me a lot. Now, something about problems like these is that this is not the case for everyone. Like I said earlier, there was wide variation with autism. It is often called the spectrum, but that's not completely true. It's closer to a large group of spectra, which causes everyone to be affected differently by it. Something commonly said about us is that we don't feel empathy. While there are some autistic people who don't feel as much empathy as other people, most autistic people actually feel a lot of empathy. Sometimes we feel too much and get overwhelmed by it. Sometimes we just don't know how to respond or react. Another thing is stimming. A common thing with autistics is needing to be constantly moving or doing something. We do things that we call stimming. These are actions that we commonly do, often subconsciously. Sometimes it's caused by emotions like happiness, and sometimes it's just done randomly. Many of us have different actions caused by different emotions. Common one is flapping hands when you're happy. I don't really do that one, but it's common. Something I want to talk about is intelligence. We are often shown as some intelligent being who is able to do thousands of calculations per second and is able to effortlessly and instantly hack into super secure things in movies and shows. While many of the smartest people in the world have or had autism, most of us are not nearly as smart as we are shown to be. We are typically similar in intelligence to others. Can be a bit there. We still have to learn like most people, we still have to have time to think, and we can definitely still make mistakes. Now, the media. Media is pretty much completely wrong about us. Just look at what we had to say about Sia's movie Music, which is about an autistic person. I have not watched it, and I'm glad I haven't. They didn't even get an autistic person to play the main character. They had planned to, but when it was too difficult for her, she left because of difficulty, and was replaced by a neurotypical actor who had no idea what it was like being autistic. One problem with the media is that they get all their information from companies like Autism Speaks, which say things that can range from hurtful to us to just complete lies. Please, if you're doing research about autism, make sure the author either is autistic or had someone autistic help with it. Even parents of autistic people do not know nearly as much about it as their child, often. My parents understand that, and I have and still am teaching them about it, but I have heard about parents supporting something that their child tells them not to, because they think that they know better. Most autistic people have what we call special interests. These are when we have a hyperfixation on a subject, which can be anything from ancient forms of entertainment to, I don't know, bananas. One reason I'm making this video is because autism itself is a special interest of mine. So if someone you know with autism has a weird obsession with something, that is normal, and please don't try to stop them from that. Now, we generally don't just only have one thing. We can have tons, which they'll go in and out. There are times between special interests where we could just be very bored because of not knowing what to do. Happens to me often. Before I end this, I just want to say that autism has major variation, so don't expect two autistic people to be the same. For instance, I have a friend who is very good at talking to people he doesn't know, but often talks too much and people get kind of annoyed by him. I am pretty much the opposite, where I'm unable to talk to people I don't know. Some people could be affected completely opposite of what I said in this. That's all I have to say. Please share this with anyone you want, so as many people as possible can learn about this. Thanks for watching, I guess. Bye.